It was a crisp autumn afternoon in 1990, and the neighborhood buzzed with the familiar sounds of children returning home from school. 7-year-old Emily Parker, bright-eyed and cheerful, waved goodbye to her friends as she turned the corner toward her street. Her house was only 3 blocks away, a walk she had taken dozens of times before without incident. Wearing her favorite denim jacket and carrying a pink backpack decorated with cartoon characters, Emily skipped along the sidewalk, unaware that this would be the last time anyone would see her. Her mother, Carol, was in the kitchen preparing a snack, glancing at the clock every few minutes. Emily was usually home by 3:45. At 4 o'clock, Carol began to feel uneasy. By 4:15, she called her husband Tom, who was at work, and then the school. No one had seen Emily since the final bell. Panic quickly replaced routine. Tom raced home, his mind spinning, refusing to believe the worst. The next hours were a blur of frantic phone calls, neighbors combing the streets, and police officers asking questions. Flashlights flickered through wooded areas, dogs were brought in to track her scent, and helicopters circled overhead. But as night fell, there was still no sign of Emily. Her backpack wasn't found. No clues. No witnesses. She had vanished without a trace in broad daylight. The Parker family's world collapsed. Tom sat on the porch with his head in his hands while Carol sobbed inside, clutching Emily's favorite stuffed bear. The police couldn't say much. They promised to do everything, but as days passed and tips turned cold, hope began to erode. What had happened on that ordinary day to an ordinary girl on her walk home? It became a question that would haunt Tom for decades. The days after Emily's disappearance blurred into one long, painful nightmare. Posters bearing her smiling face were stapled to every telephone pole, bulletin board, and store window across town. Missing, Emily Parker, age 7, they read, with a photo taken on her last birthday. Tom and Carol took turns calling news stations, handing out flyers, and answering the same heart-wrenching questions from the police and well-meaning neighbors. Each knock on the door sent their hearts racing, but it was never Emily. Weeks passed. The search parties dwindled. Media crews moved on to newer stories. The town, though shaken, slowly returned to its routines, but the Parker home remained frozen in that moment of loss. Emily's room was left untouched. Her shoes sat by the door. Her school books remained in her backpack. Carol couldn't bring herself to wash the clothes Emily had worn last. She would sometimes sit in her daughter's room for hours, staring at the walls, waiting for a sign, a memory, anything. Tom, meanwhile, turned his pain into obsession. He quit his job to devote all his time to finding Emily. He made lists of known offenders, mapped out potential abduction routes, and kept binders filled with leads, articles, and police reports. Every night, he scanned online forums and cold case websites, clinging to the hope that someone, somewhere, might know something. The emotional toll grew heavier with each passing year. Friends stopped visiting. Family gatherings became quiet, strained affairs. Carol and Tom grew distant under the weight of grief, each mourning in their own way. Their conversations became brief, functional, words spoken just to get through another day. Counseling helped briefly, but nothing filled the hole Emily had left behind. By the second year, the official investigation had gone cold. The police, though sympathetic, had no new evidence to follow. Tom refused to let it go. He marked every anniversary with renewed effort, even if it meant revisiting dead-end leads. He swore to Carol he'd never stop searching. Even as hope dimmed in her eyes, he carried the burden of faith for both of them. By 2012, more than 2 decades had passed since Emily vanished, but for Tom Parker, time had stood still. The world outside had changed. New houses, new neighbors, and a town that had long moved on. But inside Tom's home, the air remained heavy with the past. Emily's room was still the same as it had been in 1990. Her bed was neatly made with the same floral patterned comforter. Stuffed animals lined the shelves, untouched and dusted regularly by Tom, who couldn't bear to see them fade. A faded crayon drawing of their family, Emily's tiny signature in the corner, was framed on the wall, a piece of her frozen in time. Tom lived quietly now, alone. Carol had moved out years earlier. Their marriage, once strong and full of shared dreams, had slowly crumbled under the weight of grief and unanswered questions. They tried therapy, tried giving each other space, but in the end, the silence between them became louder than any argument. Carol needed to let go, to move forward, but Tom couldn't. He had promised himself, and Emily, that he would never stop looking. Each day followed the same lonely routine. Tom woke early, brewed coffee in the same old pot, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the wall, sometimes for hours. He kept every newspaper article about Emily in a thick binder, which he still opened from time to time. He scanned them for something he might have missed, a name, a face, a detail overlooked. He kept a large bulletin board in his study, covered in notes, maps, and strings connecting the few leads he once had. Most would say it was hopeless. Tom called it unfinished. One gray afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, Tom stumbled across a dusty box marked, "School." Inside were old notebooks, art projects, and a worn elementary school yearbook from 1990. He hesitated before opening it, feeling that familiar tightness in his chest. Flipping through the pages brought a flood of memories: Emily's class photo, silly group shots, signatures from children now grown. He didn't expect to find anything new, but the book would soon reveal something that would change everything. Tom sat alone in the dim attic, the fading light from a small window casting long shadows across the wooden floor. The dust from the box he had just opened still floated in the air, swirling lazily as he slowly turned the pages of the yearbook. He wasn't sure why he was looking through it. It was just one of the many remnants of a life that had been stolen. Still, something about holding it in his hands grounded him, reminded him of simpler days, when Emily's laughter filled the house and the biggest worry was whether she'd remembered her lunch. Page after page revealed smiling faces of children frozen in time. Tom's eyes scanned each photo absently, barely registering the names underneath. Most of the faces stirred nothing in him, just innocent snapshots from a time long gone. But then, as he flipped to the section for a different class, an upper grade, not Emily's, his eyes caught something that made his breath hitch. In the background of a candid group photo, standing near the edge of the playground, was a girl. She wasn't the focus of the photo, barely noticeable, really, but something about her struck Tom like a bolt of lightning. He leaned in closer, squinting at the grainy image. The girl had long light brown hair, parted the same way Emily used to wear it. Her posture, her eyes, even the slight tilt of her smile, was eerily familiar. It was like looking at a ghost aged just slightly older than when Emily disappeared. But the most chilling part was the timeline. The yearbook was from 1994, 4 years after Emily vanished. She would have been around 11 then, just like the girl in the photo. His hands began to tremble. Was it possible? Could it be her? Why would her face appear in a photo from a school she never attended, years after she'd gone missing? He flipped back to the cover to check again. The school name was unfamiliar, in a nearby town about 30 miles away. Not far, but far enough to go unnoticed if someone wanted to hide. Heart pounding, Tom grabbed his phone and took a picture of the page. A fire had reignited in him, something he hadn't felt in years. It was a long shot, maybe even a trick of the mind, but he knew that face. He knew his daughter. And now, he had a new clue. Tom barely slept that night. The photo from the yearbook haunted him, replaying in his mind like a scene he couldn't turn off. He kept opening the picture on his phone, zooming in again and again, studying every detail of the girl's face. Could it really be Emily? Could she have been living just a few towns away all along? The thought stirred a mixture of hope, fear, and disbelief. After 22 years, he had trained himself not to get pulled into false hope, but this felt different. It wasn't a vague tip or a blurry sighting, it was a face. A face he knew. The next morning, he got in his car and drove to the school listed on the cover of the yearbook, Ridgeway Middle School. It had been renamed and renovated since the 90s, but the main office was still in the same building. Tom explained he was doing personal research and asked if they had archived yearbooks or student enrollment records from the early 90s. The receptionist was skeptical at first, but eventually called the vice principal, who, after hearing Tom's quiet desperation, agreed to help. They pulled out the archived yearbooks and cross-referenced the photo. There she was again, the same girl, appearing not just once, but in multiple class candidates over a 2-year span. But the name under her photo wasn't Emily Parker. It was Rachel Evans. Tom wrote the name down carefully, feeling something shift inside him. He asked if there were any more details about her, emergency contacts, transfer records, anything, but the school said those files had been sent to the district office long ago. Undeterred, Tom drove to the district records center and requested access. It took hours of explaining, verifying his identity, and waiting for approval, but eventually, an older clerk retrieved a thin folder. Inside was Rachel Evans's school record. According to the files, she had transferred to Ridgeway in late 1993 from an address in a neighboring city, enrolled with a woman listed as her legal guardian. No father's name, no birth certificate on file, just a handwritten note from the guardian claiming temporary custody due to family hardship. That was it. No follow-up documents. No transfer out of the school. It was as if Rachel Evans had appeared for 2 years, then vanished just as suddenly. Tom stared at the papers, the same chill crawling down his spine. It was thin, but it was something. A girl who looked like Emily. Wrong name. No background. Faded into obscurity. This wasn't coincidence, it was a trail. And Tom wasn't going to stop now. Tom sat in his car outside the school district office, gripping the folder of documents as if it might disappear at any moment. His mind raced with questions. Who was this, Rachel Evans? Why were there no proper records? Why did she vanish after 2 years just like she had appeared? Everything about it felt wrong, fabricated. A false identity, perhaps. And if it was, then who created it? More importantly, was Rachel actually Emily? Fueled by a renewed sense of purpose, Tom began digging. He revisited the old photo again and again, comparing it to every picture he had of Emily. The resemblance was undeniable, but resemblance wasn't proof. He needed someone who had actually known this, Rachel Evans. Someone who had seen her in person, heard her speak, noticed her habits. He started by contacting former teachers from Ridgeway Middle School, searching through old staff directories, social media, and alumni pages. Most didn't respond, and some had moved away or retired. But after a few days, he got a call back from a woman named Mrs. Helen Whitaker, who had taught English at Ridgeway during the early 90s. Tom explained who he was and what he was searching for. Helen's voice was quiet at first, cautious, but something in his story clearly moved her. She remembered Rachel. She was a quiet girl, Helen said. Very polite. Didn't talk much in class. Always seemed guarded, like she was afraid to say too much. Helen paused, then added, there was always something about her that felt out of place. She didn't really fit in, didn't make many friends. I tried to reach out, but she kept her distance. Tom asked if she remembered anything specific, an accent, a favorite book, a unique mannerism, but Helen could only recall Rachel often staring out the window during class, doodling in her notebooks, and keeping to herself. She also remembered that the woman who came in to enroll Rachel never provided any documentation beyond a note. She said Rachel was staying with her temporarily while her parents sorted out a family crisis. I didn't question it then, but looking back, it was all very vague. With Helen's account backing up the mysterious records, Tom felt his instinct sharpening. He asked Helen if she had any idea what happened to Rachel after 1995, and Helen hesitated before replying. She just stopped coming one day. We were told the family had moved, but no one ever saw a moving truck, and she never came back for her things. That detail hit Tom hard. It echoed what he already feared. Someone had been hiding Rachel. Possibly even moving her from place to place. If Rachel really was Emily, then she had lived under someone else's control, silenced, uprooted, and erased each time she got too comfortable. With every thread, Tom was unraveling a painful possibility. Emily hadn't just vanished, she had been stolen, renamed, and hidden in plain sight. Now he had a name, a time frame, and someone who remembered her. He was getting closer. Closer than ever before. Tom sat in his car outside the school district office, gripping the folder of documents as if it might disappear at any moment. His mind raced with questions. Who was this, Rachel Evans? Why were there no proper records? Why did she vanish after 2 years just like she had appeared? Everything about it felt wrong, fabricated. A false identity, perhaps. And if it was, then who created it? More importantly, was Rachel actually Emily? Fueled by a renewed sense of purpose, Tom began digging. He revisited the old photo again and again, comparing it to every picture he had of Emily. The resemblance was undeniable, but resemblance wasn't proof. He needed someone who had actually known this, Rachel Evans. Someone who had seen her in person, heard her speak, noticed her habits. He started by contacting former teachers from Ridgeway Middle School, searching through old staff directories, social media, and alumni pages. Most didn't respond, and some had moved away or retired. But after a few days, he got a call back from a woman named Mrs. Helen Whitaker, who had taught English at Ridgeway during the early 90s. Tom explained who he was and what he was searching for. Helen's voice was quiet at first, cautious, but something in his story clearly moved her. She remembered Rachel. She was a quiet girl, Helen said. Very polite. Didn't talk much in class. Always seemed guarded, like she was afraid to say too much. Helen paused, then added, there was always something about her that felt out of place. She didn't really fit in, didn't make many friends. I tried to reach out, but she kept her distance. Tom asked if she remembered anything specific, an accent, a favorite book, a unique mannerism, but Helen could only recall Rachel often staring out the window during class, doodling in her notebooks, and keeping to herself. She also remembered that the woman who came in to enroll Rachel never provided any documentation beyond a note. She said Rachel was staying with her temporarily while her parents sorted out a family crisis. I didn't question it then, but looking back, it was all very vague. With Helen's account backing up the mysterious records, Tom felt his instincts sharpening. He asked Helen if she had any idea what happened to Rachel after 1995, and Helen hesitated before replying. She just stopped coming one day. We were told the family had moved, but no one ever saw a moving truck, and she never came back for her things. That detail hit Tom hard. It echoed what he already feared: someone had been hiding Rachel. Possibly even moving her from place to place. If Rachel really was Emily, then she had lived under someone else's control, silenced, uprooted, and erased each time she got too comfortable. With every thread, Tom was unraveling a painful possibility. Emily hadn't just vanished, she had been stolen, renamed, and hidden in plain sight. Now he had a name, a time frame, and someone who remembered her. He was getting closer. Closer than ever before. The spring air was crisp as Tom sat on a park bench overlooking a quiet playground, the kind of place Emily would have loved. He hadn't slept much in the past week, not since the pieces had started to come together. The photo, the records, the teacher's memory. Then, the final breakthrough: a woman named Rachel Evans appeared in a volunteer registry from a small animal shelter in a rural town 2 hours away. The photo on file was recent. The face in it was older, worn by time, but it carried the same quiet sadness, the same eyes Tom had memorized since the day Emily disappeared. He had reached out under a false pretense, asking for help with adopting a pet, just to confirm her identity in person. When she agreed to meet him at the park to discuss the animals, she had no idea who he really was. Now, he waited, gripping a folded photo of young Emily in one hand, heart pounding in his chest like a drum. Every second felt like an hour. Then he saw her. She walked slowly, uncertainly, clutching a notebook and looking around the park. She was in her late 20s now, with long brown hair tied back in a simple braid, wearing jeans and a worn jacket. As she approached, Tom stood up. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She gave a polite smile, the kind strangers exchange. But then she paused. Her eyes lingered on his face. I'm Rachel, she said cautiously. Tom couldn't find words. He looked into her eyes, trembling. Slowly, he held out the photograph. This is Emily Parker, he said, voice cracking. My daughter. You look just like her. Rachel's smile faltered. She looked at the photo, and her expression shifted, subtly, but unmistakably. Confusion, fear, recognition. I don't know who that is, she said, but her voice was shaking. Her hand trembled slightly as she held the picture. Tom nodded gently. Maybe not, but I think you do. Or at least, some part of you does. She looked away, blinking hard. I've had dreams, she whispered, almost to herself. Since I was little. Of a house I don't remember. A woman calling my name. Not Rachel. Another name. I thought I made it up. Tears welled in Tom's eyes. It wasn't made up. The silence between them stretched long and heavy. Birds chirped. A child's laughter echoed in the distance. Finally, Rachel looked at him again, tears beginning to roll down her cheeks. Are you saying I'm her? That I'm Emily? I'm saying I believe you are, Tom said softly. And I'll help you find the truth. No matter what it takes. And for the first time in 22 years, father and daughter stood face to face. The moment wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, trembling, raw. But it was real. The kind of moment that could begin to mend a lifetime of silence. Weeks passed since that emotional meeting in the park, and life had begun to shift in quiet, profound ways. Rachel, Emily, had agreed to take a DNA test, though the truth was already written in the way she and Tom looked at each other. The results arrived 2 weeks later, delivered in a plain envelope. Tom opened it alone, hands shaking, and read the confirmation through a blur of tears, a 99.9% match. There it was, in black and white, scientific proof of what his heart had already known. Rachel Evans was Emily Parker. When he told her, Emily sat in stunned silence. There was no joyous outburst, no dramatic collapse, just a deep, emotional stillness as the weight of her stolen past began to settle. In the days that followed, they talked for hours. She didn't remember much from before she was taken, just flashes of a warm kitchen, a lullaby, the scent of her mother's perfume. But even fragments were enough. They filled in the blanks together, Tom gently guiding her through stories of her early childhood, showing her photos, drawings, even her old stuffed animals, preserved for decades in a box he had never given up on. Emily revealed more too. The woman who raised her, never kind, never cruel, had told her she was Rachel, and that her parents were gone. She had moved often, homeschooled until she was enrolled in Ridgeway under false documents, and pulled out again when people asked too many questions. Emily always knew something was off, that her life didn't quite add up. But she was a child, and questions were punished with silence. When she finally broke free and started living on her own, she tried not to look back. Until Tom appeared, holding that photo. They began meeting regularly, slowly rebuilding the connection that had been severed all those years ago. Emily was hesitant at first, unsure of where she belonged, but Tom never pressured her. He just showed up, kind, steady, patient. He introduced her to old family friends. They visited the home she had once lived in. She stepped into her childhood bedroom, still preserved like a time capsule, and broke down in tears. For the first time in years, she felt a strange comfort, a sense of home. Carol, Emily's mother, had remarried and moved away, but when she learned the truth, she made the journey back. Their reunion was different, complicated, emotional, raw, but necessary. Carol cried harder than Emily had ever seen someone cry, holding her daughter like she'd never let go again. It would take time to fully reconnect, but the first step had been taken. On a sunny afternoon, Tom and Emily walked through that same park where they had first met again. They didn't speak much, words weren't always needed. She reached out and took his hand, a simple gesture heavy with meaning. For years, Tom had clung to fading hope, but now, hope had become something tangible, something real. Their lives were different now. Time could never be recovered. But they had a future, unwritten, uncertain, but theirs. Together.